Ambition without intelligence is like a bird without wings. Salvador Dali said that and he was as mad as a box of steroid-fueled frogs, but he's got a point. A video game with ambition is great to see, pushing the boundaries and attempting to raise the state of the industry for the good of gamers and developers alike. However, there have been many games which flew too close to the sun of ambition, fueled by promises and Kickstarter dosh, only to end up, like that wingless bird, a hot mess. With this in mind, I'm Jules for WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 ridiculously ambitious video games that failed horribly. Number 10. Beyond Two Souls. Developers Quantic Dream should really just quit making games and just commit to making movies, seeing as every title they've knocked out, including the upcoming Detroit Become Human, are just a series of elaborate QTEs. Now, I'm not bashing them for this, as Heavy Rain and Indigo Prophecy were enjoyable, if very restrictive, experiences. Beyond Two Souls, however, was for the most part an absolute chore. Despite its awesome and, in the case of Willem Dafoe's face, terrifying motion capture, that was pretty much all it had going for it. With the budget sunk in how the game looks, no one thought to address the fact that the game played like a hand-holding mother, forcing the gamer to play how it wanted them to. It's a game which acts like Ben Potter. Beautiful to look at, but worryingly dead behind the eyes. Number 9. Destiny. Do you remember when there was a time where every bus stop, billboard and homeless person was plastered with a Destiny advert? I do, as it was the only thing that kept me warm at nights. Bungie's plan was to release a multiplayer first-person shooter that combined the tight as choir boy scrotum's combat from Halo with the sustainability of an MMO. While most agree that Destiny isn't a bad game, it was certainly overhyped for what was delivered. Many players reported that they'd gotten bored or run out of content within weeks of release, thanks to missions that felt repetitive and relied too much on backtracking previous areas. And nothing makes the infinite expanse of space feel small than having to stomp under-leveled pawns in the opening areas again and again. Number 8. Duke Nukem Forever. Look, Duke was once one of the legendary icons of the gaming industry. Hair that you could set your watch to and insistence on wearing sunglasses indoors, he was a rad douche who sold more games than he'd had sexual health scares. Duke Nukem Forever, though, was a blight on his career from which he's not since recovered. It was meant to be the next big step for the one-line wonder, complete with more explosions and venereal violence than ever before. However, it was a development which was plagued by delays, rewrites and graphical overhauls, which meant that what was delivered held about as much relevance to promises made as an Auto Trader advert for a Ford estate which turns out to be a bloke trying to shift a dead dog. Number 7. Jurassic Park Trespasser. Often hailed as both the worst and most ambitious game of 1998, what a title, Trespasser was a highly anticipated game that offered a number of pioneering features. With innovations such as regenerating health, a HUD-less display, and a physics-based engine, Trespasser could never be accused of playing it safe. Sadly, it was just a little bit too ahead for its time to live up to its ridiculously advanced vision. Many gamers complained that the game wouldn't even run on their computers properly, while reviewers derided the game for being buggy and overly difficult thanks to clunky controls. Trespasser has since gained something of a cult following thanks to its innovations, but it was a downright failure on release. Number 6. Advent Rising. Advent Rising was supposed to be an epic space opera game for the Xbox generation. A clear inspiration for the Mass Effect series, the devs behind Advent Rising wanted to be at the head of a cinematic revolution in gaming. Although the game's ambition was admirable, including a script and story written by Ender's Game author Orson Scott Card, the technical execution was subpar. Many of the cutscenes would awkwardly bug out, and the AI consisted of little more than moving target practice with the life preservation skills of a man sexually aroused by dirty hypodermic needles. Advent Rising was still an enjoyable game on some level, but the poor technical aspects held it back from greatness. Number 5. APB All Points Bulletin. Despite being developed by a relatively young studio, APB All Points Bulletin had a reasonable level of hype before its release in 2010. The game was set to be a massively multiplayer online game set in urban sprawls, wherein players could join a gang of criminals or a group of law enforcers and complete missions, catch criminals, or just cause all-out mayhem. The words Grand Theft Auto and online were thrown around a lot, and APB looks set to be one of the most ambitious online multiplayer games ever. Unfortunately, the relatively small studio just couldn't cope with the financial pressures of starting up a fledgling MMO, and Real-Time Worlds entered into administration only 2 months after release. APB now exists as a free-to-play game, but it's a husk of its former self and a mockery of the lofty ambitions of the original. Number 4. Daikatana. Back in the days where John Romero, aka Discount Andrew WK, could do no wrong, Daikatana was one of the most highly anticipated FPS titles ever. Built using the Quake engine, Romero wanted Daikatana to weave an epic journey through time, with puzzle elements to accompany the gunplay. Unfortunately, the team was just too small, inexperienced, and according to some, nearly worked to death by Grand Overlord Glorious Leader Romero to produce the game within the time limits and budget given. Daikatana development dragged on and on until it began to look hideously dated in comparison to the AAA efforts being released at the same time. And when Daikatana was released in 2000, it felt like a buggy relic, receiving poor sales and a terrible critical reaction. Number 3. Messiah. One of the most hyped PC games of the early 2000s, Messiah seemed to be more focused on marketing the product than actually making the game deliver on its promises. Messiah seemed to be on the cover of every gaming magazine in the late 90s, while ads lauded it as the next big thing in gaming. The game's premise was excitingly ambitious, putting players in the shoes of a cherub who could possess Earth's people in order to fight against sin itself. Things started to get troubling though when it missed its Christmas 1998 release date, and then again in summer of 1999. Once Messiah was finally released in 2000, critics and gamers were left wondering what all the fuss was about. The gameplay was clunky and the hype had severely died by the time it limped onto the scene, leading to disappointing sales and cancelled console ports. Also, people probably wised up to the fact that playing as a space baby actually wasn't as cool as originally pitched. Number 2. Too Human. Like several others on this list, Too Human is notable for its long time spent in developmental hell. Originally planned as a big exclusive for the PlayStation in 1999, the rights for Too Human were eventually sold to Microsoft in 2005, finally releasing it as an Xbox 360 exclusive in 2008. In a science fiction crossover with Norse mythology, Too Human's marketing was squarely focused on pushing the game as one of the most ambitious ever made. Taking elements from Western RPGs, fighters, and action games, Too Human was set to be the killer app for the Xbox 360. By the time it was released, however, critics were generally indifferent, earning it mediocre reviews thanks to repetitive gameplay, a dodgy camera, and that infamous unskippable death sequence. And number 1, Shenmue. Now, before you get your pitchforks out, nobody here is saying that the Dreamcast Shenmue is a bad game. In fact, it's one of the best ever made, with a rich open world that rivals even today's offerings. The complex but compelling plot, huge variety of things to do, and tight combat means that Shenmue will forever be remembered as one of the greatest games ever released. Unfortunately though, while Shenmue was a huge critical success, the scope of its ambition meant that it was technically a commercial failure. The budget was reported as being as high as $70 million, far higher than any title before it, which meant that every single Dreamcast owner would have to purchase Shenmue twice before Sega would see a profit. In other words, Shenmue was so ambitious that the budget required to fulfill that ambition made it literally impossible to be a commercial success. And that's our list. Got any more games which aimed for the moon but burned up on re-entry? Well, let us know about them in the comments section below. And if you want to help me realise my ambition of being liked by a group of unwashed peasants, then you can do so here or on my personal Twitter, RetroJ0. As always, if you enjoyed the video, then like, share and subscribe for more. I've been Jules for WhatCulture.com, and I'll see you soon.